Hello and welcome to IR. I am Melvin Vilictawa and today we explore the enduring Sino-Indian dispute over the line of actual control, a long-standing conflict between the two biggest states of Asia. I am with Ms. Prebelin Marticio, Ms. Melody Gonzaga, and Ms. Kate Ponce. Please join us as we dive into the nuances of no-war fight over the border through the lens of neorealism. It was 62 years ago when the close ties of China and India were severed over the border conflict, with the absence of demarcation line indicating which belongs to who. The part of present LAC serves only as a zone in the past. Since China conquered Tibet in 1951, it claimed more control of the border. With this, there is no common understanding of the line between the two territories, which led to confusion and overlapping of claims of the area. One of the most relevant to this is the Akshay chain, a part of Ladakh which is now controlled by China. Both are aiming for the demarcation line, but negotiations of the past always go in vain as no one vows to agree. And with that, the year 1962 witnessed the only war of Sino-India throughout the history. From 1962 to 1980, no talk has been made. After 1980, the world saw the acceptance of India in the concept of LAC, and proposals for borders were made. But then again, it did not succeed. In the present, both states hold on to the 1993 and 1996 agreement, seeking peace and tranquility. Nevertheless, standoffs and club fights occurred, and the diplomatic relationship between the two was at risk. Considering that dispute sought tranquility and peace, why hasn't the issues been resolved in the present? Particularly that the borderlines are crucial for securing territory as well as strategizing defenses.
There was an approach from both parties in the late 20th century, trying to create clear borderline between the two. Well, initially, Tabet, which by then was an autonomous region, had a customary relationship with India, deemed that borderline was irrelevant. The efforts of China were rejected. India handled it badly at that time since they believed that borders are not needed when customs are made over zones. And because of that, negotiations is necessary if we know what's ours. So only after 1980, when negotiations happened again, there was also an instance when China proposed a swap that India shall surrender the east while China is on the west. But this was unfair for India since it would also mean surrendering the larger Arunachal while only getting the smaller Aksai Chin. Aksai Chin is a challenging landscape to say the least. It's an inhospitable barren expanse with an average elevation about 5,000 meters or 16,400 feet above sea level. Think of a high desert plateau where the air is thin. The winters are brutally cold and even summers don't bring much warmth. This isn't place you'd think of for a pleasant picnic, but its strategic value is immense. The high altitude provides a natural defensive barrier, making it incredibly tough for any invading force to mount an offensive. Imagine trying to fight a battle while dealing with thin air and rugged terrain. It's a nightmare for any military planner. Aksai Chin is also of economic and logistical importance. The network of roads in this area serves not only for transporting soldiers but also promoting economic connectivity between Tabet and Xinjiang. This connection contributes to economic growth and ensures that these distant regions are included in China's development. Resource exploration is also possible. Despite its challenging conditions, Aksai Chin has potential for valuable mineral resources that have yet to be explored. What hideous, what hidden treasures could possibly lie beneath or forbidding exterior?
It was a matter of sovereignty for India. They could have surrendered those lands, but Doing so is giving up their long held claim of the territory and the whole border that's been there since British colonialism.
Actually, the India should not be problematizing this if only the British did not fail to demarcate the border.
Yes, it's like you inherited the land from your parents and ended up fighting with your brother because the title was not clear.
Yeah, that's right. That's the best simile for this. When the British still has India on its hand, the proposed line was the Johnson's line in 1965. But later on, in 1893, I'm sorry, they made the McDonald line, which the China followed.
And that's the line the Chinese followed.
Yeah, that's the line. So they their confidence in building the highway in Aksai Chin was because of this line. Because Aksai Chin is part of China according to the McDonald line. It's kind of problematic, right?
Yes, knowing that the MacDonald line was the latest than Johnson's, that could be the final border. India only had its independence in 1947, but they followed Johnson line. So in any way, both have point, but also both have a mistake. But if only those two countries were demarcated, no confusions could happen.
So, what is this border conflict all about for China and India? It's been so long. They should have made an agreement and demarcated it.
Well, while India is protecting its sovereignty, China believes that the LAC is a strategic advantage. They built a highway crossing Aksai Chin connecting Xinjiang to Tibet. Well, this highway was one of the main reasons why the 1962 war sparked. It a barren land with no precipitation. It has no resources at all. India used not to care about it because of its desertness. This could be one reason for China to fairly put that highway there. This made access to Xinjiang easier as it is a remote area. It's a disputed zone, so it's absurd to put infrastructure in the area and fight for it. The laws governing disputed area, such as Aksai-Chin, differs in aspects such as differing perspective of both countries. Where in China, administers Aksai-Chin as part of its Xinjiang and Tibet autonomous regions. Chinese law, therefore, applies within this region as per its governance structures, while India's official maps and legal documents reflect Aksai Chin as an Indian territory. Indian law theoretically applies to the region, although this is not enforceable due to the Chinese control.
For international law, that is particular unjust. Yes, it's honor the nation's right to utilize its land for infrastructures. But since the disputed land is claimed by two or more, then other countries might be the one who has right. That's why clear demarcation line is needed. So there will be no complaint since it signals everyone where one's territories ends.
The Chinese force advanced to the Aksai Chin, close to Galwan, to protect this land.
To what extent is this highway so important to China that they even resorted to putting force in front before the LAC?
Well, Aksai Chin is a highland area, but this road was very flat. It is a salient strategic point by which even tanks may go. This sophisticated built highway can open vast opportunities, notably advantage in surveillance and monitoring, allowing China to monitor the movements along its borders more effectively, and it enables better intelligence gathering and early warning capabilities. Economically, it gives better access to transportation that leads the way to remote areas. This access eases the trade, contributing to economic growth.
It is not only roads, there were also establishments and residential located in Aksai which the Chinese government allowed. But one we also have to see is the support of China to Pakistan, which triggered misunderstanding on the side of India. China became the biggest investor of Pakistan on its road infrastructure in the Pakistani controlled area of Kashmir. Yes, this is expensive considering the close Sino-India diplomatic relationship while India has a withstanding conflict with the other. This is very fact manifest how China is creating a system of alliances with its neighboring country as a strategic defense for possible collusion with India due to LAC.
Would also like to add here that Pakistan and India has been in conflict for so long. So when China attempt to further expand its territory or advance in the western part of India, it would be a danger for India because it will lose its territory in the northern region. It will lessen its defense against the Pakistan because China's advance in the more land of oxygen, particularly near the Pakistani borders, would mean that more soldiers will be brought in the LAC and able to fight with China. And of course, there will be less land wherein India could fight with Pakistan and position their frontier or their defense.
Alliance is inevitable. India also got help from its allied countries to aid in the dispute over the border. Last 2022, the US provided India with real time data and technology that enabled them to determine the position of the People's Liberation Army of China. This unprecedented intelligence is an advantage to India for the possible war, as the US noted that China is always getting ready for the probable clash.
I see, and noticeably there was no major conflict between the two since 1962 war. But based on these pieces of information, there's always a preparation to fight. Something like get your gun pointed at the enemy, but don't shoot. What could be the meaning of this?
In the initial sight of it, there seems like tranquility and peace between India and China. But this is only a mask of the real conflict behind the curtains.
Both China and India aim to ensure rapid mobilization, sustained military presence, and operational readiness in the face of ongoing border tensions. Both India and China have increased their military and infrastructure readiness along the line of actual control. India has expedited the building of roads and bridges with the help of the Border Roads Organization or the BRO, particularly focusing on the Darbukshok Daulat Beg Oldi or the DSDBO road. Additionally, the country has improved airfields and airports in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, with the Daulat Beg Oldi airstrip being a significant source. The construction of tunnels such as the Atal Tunnel ensuring all seasons connectivity to Ladakh and the proposed Shinkunla Tunnel will improve accessibility to border regions. India has also set up both temporary and permanent military bases with modern amenities to endure severe weather conditions, along with deploying advanced surveillance systems. Military operation involved more frequent patrols along the line of actual control and collaborative training sessions with partners like the United States and Japan. China, on the other hand, is also working on improving the Xinjiang Tabet Highway or the G219 and other important roads, while upgrading airfields such as the Ngari Airport to enhance military logistics and operations. The building of vital tunnels for transportation and storing military resources is currently in progress. China has built strong permanent military bases with modern facilities in the Tabet Autonomous Region and construct temporary camps during times of increased tensions. Routine troops rotations and extensive military exercises in Tabet and Xinjiang maintain readiness for combat and showcase China's military strength in the region.
There is legal reason why the two parties cannot suddenly attack each other. Actually, there in 1993 and sequentially in 1996, foreign ministers and leaders of both countries signed an agreement that there should be confidence and transparency on the matter of the LAC, particularly military activities. With that, armaments, military were reduced in number and some kinds were not permitted within the proximity of the LAC. And because of this, there should be no sign of aggression.
However, the worst case there was each is waiting for others to fail so they can advance militarily. There is a course of accusations that could either be rooted of biases and misunderstanding. Take for example when India built a road close to LAC and connected to high altitude airbase, China began to build tents, dig trenches, and move heavy equipment inside that they already acknowledged as Indian territory.
That matter, according to China, was a strategy against them.
Yeah, the road makes it easier for India to bring troops to LAC because it's very close. It's only several kilometers to LAC. And China took this as an offensive movement. It triggered them to advance beyond the unclearly demarcated yet mutually agreed LAC. So there was actually stand-ups. They built their tents beyond the mutually agreed borders and actually the land that was mutually agreed as an Indian territory.
But this is the Galwan standoff, right?
Yeah, the standoff. It was in 2020. 20 Indians reportedly died, while China had no clear report of their casualties and number of deaths until 4 months passed. India also considers this as a transgression of the 1996 agreement, since it is the first fight, between the two since 1970s, where there was reported several deaths. Because in the past, in 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2017, there were only injuries. During this past standoffs, only misunderstanding occurred. Although there were heated arguments and face off between the two, they always end up with a peace talk, with the negotiation for military leaders.
You know what? That event disturbed the status quo. Chinese forces situated themselves in the formerly peaceful remote area of Galwan. And not just that, it is an agreed Indian territory. That's the view of India. But for China, it was India who broke the status quo with its strategic road. It's all a matter of the other should be blamed. Their kind of justification for aggression that is supposedly prohibited in the 1996 agreement. One time, China accused India of firing near the LAC. This was considered a trigger and had sparked misunderstanding. There's always an attempt to put another on the pedestal.
If that's the case, although the legal agreement prevailed in the bilateral relationship between China and India, there is always cautiousness about the possibility of clashes.
It's securing themselves. Diplomatic relationships do not exist to have peace between them. In reality, they engage in diplomacy for personal gain. Once either of China or India attacks, the damage will retaliate to them. There was this event when Xi Jinping visited China for an agreement or for the investment, but simultaneously there was an attack in Aksai from the Chinese forces. Very ironic that while the troops were fighting, a negotiation over each other's aid on education, infrastructure, and even natural disasters were made. There's there was 12 MOU dealt with between India and China during that visit.
So looking back around 1990, China and India had equal GDP. In 1990, the per capita income of China has $318, while India has slightly greater at $368. At the same time, the GDP of both countries are almost equal. And even in terms of purchasing power parity, China has slightly ahead of India. And the 1990s and 2000s were China's decades.
You mean from a largely agrarian society into the industrial powerhouse? By 2010, China's economy actually had already surpassed that of United States in 1990, measured by nominal GDP. And with this economic equality, no one can touch the other. But the case is different now since 2010 specifically.
The economy damage will be the biggest aspect that each will suffer. That is exactly why China has been aggressive over the past decades. For economy's sake, the time China's GDP hit higher than India's, it became able to sustain military needs and strengthened its force, particularly in LCA. In fact, China has tripled the military spending of India. When we compare the economy and military between China and India, China's economy is significantly larger than India's. In 2023, China's GDP is projected to be around 16.6 trillion, while India's GDP is estimated at 3.2 trillion. That's that's a large gap. China's economic growth has been robust, allowing it to allocate substantial resources to various sectors, including defense. In military spending, China's defense budget has consistently outpaced India's. In 2023, China defense spending is projected to be approximately 225 billion, which is more than 3 times India's defense budget of 72.6 billion for the same year. China's military spending has been rising steadily. It grew by 7.2% in 2023, marking the eighth consecutive year of increase. This growth rate surpassed China targeted economic growth of around 5%. India's defense budget, while substantial, remains significantly lower than China's. However, India has been making efforts to modernize its armed forces and enhance its capabilities. If a clash happens, India will suffer most economic loss as China is its second biggest trade partner, while for China, India is only at the 10th. Relying heavily on imports from China, India risks facing shortages and increases in prices. Export focused sectors might be negatively impacted, resulting in potential disruptions to supply chains and the risk of job cuts. Chinese investments in India may be retracted, affecting both current and upcoming projects. The technology industry, on the other hand, which received significant backing from Chinese investments, would face challenges that would impede its ability to innovate. Collaborative infrastructures, initiatives, and trade routes could be put on hold. China's various partnerships and worldwide investments provide protection against disturbances. Well, in comparison to India, China would have a lesser negative effect on the economy, as it could shift trade and explore different investments options through programs such as the Belt and Road Initiative. But what makes China still cautious, aside from the strong alliances of India with other powerful countries, is its control over the Gate of the Malacca Strait. It is the most important global trade route essential for China's maritime expansion. If India closes this, it would be a large cost, exporting through air instead of cargo ships. So, both countries have their cards to play. And together with their alliances, there's a balance of power.
The best strategy that China shows is provoking India, right? With its attack and retreat tactics. They built a tunnel within the disputed area, advancing within the mutually agreed Indian territory, and finding holes in India which are all against the 1993 and 1996 agreements. The moment that India allow itself to resort to aggression, it would be a sufficient justification for China to implicitly go against the agreement. That is a signal, right?
It may, yeah, I believe China is the third strongest military force in the world, according to Forbes. Yet they chose not to fight. So it can't only be a mistake, or they had the feeling of inferiority in case of a war happened. It's a provocation, and by this, they are displaying their capacity.
China could stay within their country beyond the mutually agreed LAC, but advancing through India is a manifestation of their willingness to go to war, I guess, I believe.
But they've been very careful. There were several standoffs that occurred, but only in the 2020 in Galwan happened to have deaths.
Yes, so we don't disregard that, but as we have always said since earlier, that's all about mutual gain and cautiousness. So displaying coercive movements in the LAC dispute means that China, despite the repercussions and the international intervention, will be all willing to fight.
That assertiveness, regardless of its ground, in the eyes of other countries, may be interpreted as a signal that China, they will fight. They won't retreat if war broke out. It always goes that way. Even action made for defensive tactics will be interpreted as offensive by the other. This is why even the road to the airbase that India built was taken offensive by China.
Yes, and even by the existence of international law, war is inevitable with regard to LAC. There was a bilateral agreement and all, but still they are preparing for battle.
Do you think other countries have a say on this, or do they just let China and India fight or fought over the border?
There were actually concerns from other countries, particularly the major powers such as the US and Russia, urging the two to maintain a fully peaceful negotiation and end to a clear mutual agreement on that. Nevertheless, India began to move its army now from Indian-Pakistan border to the LAC, considering also that Europe sided with India, and we cannot blame them for that because India was their former colonial land.
There were always a talk, right?
Yeah, there is.
That's it. They always had standoffs, but end up having dialogue afterwards.
After the fight in Galwan, the two sides participated in 18 rounds of corps commander level meetings, which led to a limited withdrawal of forces and the creation of military buffer zones. And with that, these talks help limit unwanted escalation. A success that we can overlook, but even dialogues happened, both parties after that strengthened and upgraded their forces. So the international sphere must be real concerned about this. Anyway, these two are regional powers of Asia. The superiority of the other will stabilize its status and position in the Asian politics. And this line of actual control may be the way for either China or India to be the regional power.
Both are at a disadvantage and an advantage. While in the past, LAC was a matter of border. In the present, it is a tool for China to balance growing power of India. LAC came out to be a convenience. With continuous provocation in the LAC, there would be growing and continuous military spending affecting the economy. It's not a win-win situation. This is more of a loss regardless that conflict escalates or not. And today, LAC is not merely a border dispute, a talk of sovereignty. It is a neo-realist strategy.
What a very comprehensive discussion on the Sino-Indian dispute. It is a never-ending fight over the border. Not only it is for balance, but also for expanding territories. Thank you so much to our fellow podcaster today, Miss Marticio, Miss Gonzaga, and Miss Ponce, who gave us informative and neorealist view of this matter. Please follow us for more IR contents.
Thank you so much, Melvin.
Thank you so much.